The taste of her skin, a soft murmur against my lips, sent shivers through me, a sensation so raw and primal it eclipsed the gilded cage of my existence. My fingers, usually adorned with family jewels, now threaded through the wild strands of her hair, pulling her closer, deepening the kiss until the world outside ceased to exist. Our bodies, a tangle of limbs and desperate sighs, pressed together on the worn rug of her small studio apartment. The scent of turpentine and oil paint mingled with the sweet perfume of her skin, a heady concoction that intoxicated me more than any champagne I'd ever sipped. My breath hitched as her hand, calloused from countless hours wielding a brush, traced a path along my spine, sending a jolt of pleasure straight through me. I arched into her touch, a whimper escaping my throat, a sound I never knew I was capable of making. When I was down there, the rhythm of my breath synced with hers, a silent, passionate symphony. Her fingers, ever so gently, found their way beneath the silk of my blouse, tracing the delicate curve of my ribs, sending another wave of exquisite sensation through me. Our chests tightened together, a delicious pressure that promised both ecstasy and oblivion. I felt the heat radiate from her body, a warmth that chased away the perpetual chill of my own privileged, yet often lonely, world. Our legs were crossing each other, brushing against each other down there, a soft friction that built an unbearable tension. Every touch, every subtle movement, was a whispered promise, a silent agreement to lose ourselves in this moment, to forget the expectations, the obligations, the impossible choices that awaited me. Her touch, so tentative yet so firm, sent ripples through me, awakening parts of myself I hadn't known were dormant. I felt her nails gently graze my inner thigh, and a gasp caught in my throat. It was a silent conversation, a language spoken only through touch and sensation, more profound than any words could ever be. This was my secret, my escape, my audacious rebellion against a life already meticulously planned out for me. How had I, the heiress to an empire, found myself here on the floor of a struggling artist's studio, abandoning everything I knew for the fierce, undeniable pull of her? The dichotomy was stark, the cold marble of my ancestral home versus the vibrant chaos of her creative space, the stifling expectations of my family versus the boundless freedom I found in her arms. It was a choice I knew even then would change everything. The weight of my family name, the fortune, the legacy, all of it seemed to fade into a distant hum when her lips found mine again, gentle at first, then demanding, possessive. I let myself be consumed, willingly, joyfully, by the exquisite fire she ignited within me. My life before her was a meticulously curated exhibition of privilege. Every day was a performance, every interaction a negotiation, every choice preordained. My ancestral home, a sprawling estate of cold marble and echoing halls, felt less like a sanctuary and more like a gilded cage. I moved through it like a ghost, my own desires often silent, unheard. Then I saw her. It was at a charity auction, one of those obligatory social events where I usually perfected the art of polite disinterest. Her painting, a riot of bold colors and raw emotion, stood out amidst the conservative landscapes and portraits. I was drawn to it, captivated by its unapologetic defiance. I felt an inexplicable pull, a sense of recognition as if a hidden part of myself had found its mirror. I purchased it not because I needed another piece of art, but because I needed to know the hand that had created such vibrant beauty. Our first meeting was orchestrated, a polite arrangement for me to collect the painting from her studio. I remember the scent of her space vividly, a chaotic symphony of turpentine, linseed oil, and something distinctly her, perhaps the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee or the subtle sweetness of charcoal dust. It was a world away from the sterile perfection of my own. She, Maya, stood amidst the beautiful mess, her dark curls framing a face smudged with paint. Her eyes, the color of warm honey, held a fierce intelligence and a disarming vulnerability. My breath caught in my throat. I had expected an artist, perhaps bohemian, but not this captivating force of nature. She wore overalls, paint-splattered and worn, a stark contrast to my tailored silk dress. Yet, in that moment, I felt utterly underdressed, less authentic. We talked for hours that first day, a conversation that flowed effortlessly, touching on art, life, dreams, and the quiet aches of our souls. I found myself revealing thoughts and feelings I had never voiced to anyone, not even my closest friends. Her laughter was a melodious sound, rich and genuine, a stark contrast to the polite titters I was accustomed to. I watched the way her hands moved as she spoke, animated and expressive, and a strange warmth bloomed in my chest. There was a moment when our hands brushed over a canvas she was showing me, a spark that sent a jolt through my fingertips, an electric current that lingered long after our skins separated. I quickly pulled my hand away, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, surprised by the intensity of my reaction. I found excuses to return to her studio, initially under the guise of discussing commissioning another piece. Soon, the pretense became transparent, at least to me. I craved her company, the invigorating honesty of her world. We would sit for hours, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking about everything and nothing. I'd watch her paint, mesmerized by the way her brush danced across the canvas, transforming abstract thoughts into tangible beauty. There was a raw sensuality in her focused intensity, a quiet passion that drew me in deeper with each visit. One afternoon, as the setting sun cast long shadows across her studio, painting the room in hues of orange and purple, she offered me a mug of lukewarm tea. Our fingers brushed again as I took it, and this time, neither of us pulled away immediately. Her touch was warm, comforting, and utterly electrifying. I felt a blush creep up my neck, a sensation I hadn't experienced since adolescence. The air thickened between us, charged with an unspoken understanding, a silent longing that resonated deep within my soul. I caught myself staring at her lips, imagining their softness against mine, and quickly averted my gaze, my heart doing a frantic dance. My fear of discovery battled with an exhilarating sense of possibility. One evening, after another long, profound conversation, she walked me to my car. The streetlights cast a soft glow on her face, highlighting the paint smudges that still clung to her cheek. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, the silence between us heavy with unspoken desires. My gaze was fixed on her, unable to tear away. She reached out, her fingers gently brushing a stray strand of hair from my face, tucking it behind my ear. It was a simple gesture, yet it sent a tremor through me, a profound intimacy that spoke volumes. My body leaned into hers, an unconscious movement, seeking the warmth, the connection. Her eyes, those beautiful honey-colored eyes, met mine, and in them I saw a reflection of my own burgeoning longing. It was then, under the soft glow of the streetlights, that she leaned in, slowly, almost tentatively. Our lips met, a gentle exploration at first, then deepening, a soft pressure that unleashed a torrent of emotions I had kept carefully locked away. It was not a kiss of frantic passion, but of tender discovery, a silent promise of something more, something profoundly real. I tasted art, freedom, and a future I hadn't dared to dream of. The secret became a delicate, fragile thing we nurtured in the hidden corners of our lives. My days were still dictated by board meetings, foundation galas, and the suffocating presence of my family's expectations, but my nights belonged to Maya. I would slip away, exchanging the cool silk sheets of my mansion for the rough cotton blankets on her narrow bed, trading the silence of my halls for the comforting symphony of her late-night painting sessions. In her arms, the burden of my identity, the multi-billion-dollar weight of my legacy, simply melted away. We lay together, our limbs entwined, speaking in hushed tones about her dreams of a gallery show, the tactile joy of mixing pigments, and my quiet fears about a future not my own. One night, as she rested her head on my shoulder, her breath soft against my neck, I whispered the truth, the immense pressure on me to marry a suitable, powerful man and secure the future of the family corporation. The words felt like lead on my tongue, but she only squeezed my hand reassuringly, a silent understanding passing between us. The twist came swiftly and brutally, shattering our fragile bubble. My family, through their countless, invisible channels, discovered our clandestine relationship. It wasn't a confrontational scene, but a cold, calculated ambush. I was called into the oak-paneled study, the room where all family decisions, spanning generations, were made. My mother, usually so composed, looked at me with an expression of icy disappointment that cut deeper than any anger. The terms were laid out with chilling clarity: my inheritance, my position on the board, my entire future was conditional. I was expected to terminate the unsuitable entanglement immediately and accept the prearranged engagement to a longtime business associate's son. The alternative was complete and immediate financial and social disinheritance, a choice between absolute fortune and Maya. The finality of the demand left me breathless. I realized in that moment the true price of my gilded cage. I was not a woman with agency. I was an asset, a pawn in a colossal corporate game. The love I felt for Maya, which had felt so expansive and powerful, was now an unbearable liability in their eyes. The fear, sharp and paralyzing, wrapped its icy fingers around my heart. Could I truly abandon everything, the comfort, the security, the life I had known, for an uncertain future with a struggling artist? The thought of poverty, of struggling to make ends meet, was a terrifying unknown. But the thought of losing the only person who had ever seen me, not the heiress, was an unbearable pain. I felt the sharp ache of this impossible decision. I wanted to run straight to Maya, to bury my fears in her embrace, but I knew I had to face this alone first. I stood in the heavy silence of the study, the polished mahogany reflecting the cold light, and knew my life was balanced on a razor's edge. Just a quick pause. If you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button and stay with us here on Sapphic Tales. The ultimatum was a weight I couldn't shed. I kept it a secret from Maya for a few days, visiting her studio with a forced cheerfulness that felt brittle and fake. The silence between us, once comfortable and easy, was now laced with a tension that I alone was creating. I grew quiet, withdrawn. The vibrant joy I usually felt in her presence replaced by a constant, gnawing anxiety. The fear was twofold: the practical terror of financial ruin and the emotional terror of being forced to hurt the one person I loved. Every time her hand brushed mine, every time she smiled that genuine, warm smile, the conflict within me escalated, tearing me apart. One evening, we were on the floor again, not in passion, but just lying side by side, listening to the rain outside. Her fingers lightly traced the lines on my palm, a simple, tender act that cracked my composure. I felt the familiar pull of her touch, the deep intimacy that transcended the physical. I wanted to tell her everything, to lay the whole impossible choice at her feet, but the words were trapped, suffocating me. Instead, I pulled her close, kissing her with a desperation I couldn't hide, seeking refuge in the physical connection. It wasn't the easy, joyful passion we usually shared. It was a hungry, frantic attempt to anchor myself before the storm hit. I pressed my hands under her shirt, feeling the heat of her skin, the steady beat of her heart, trying to absorb her strength. I felt her confusion, her soft, questioning moan beneath my lips as she sensed the sudden shift in my mood, the underlying panic in my touch. Later that night, as we lay awake, entangled beneath the rough sheets, the internal conflict spilled out. I began to whisper about my life, the expectations, the constant surveillance, the complete lack of true freedom. I spoke about the immense power my family wielded, the impossibility of ever truly escaping their reach, even if I walked away from the money. I confessed my fears about being inadequate, about not being strong enough to face a life without the safety net of wealth. I saw the worry cloud her warm eyes in the dim light. She turned toward me, resting her head on my chest, listening without judgment. Her steady presence, the simple weight of her body, offered a profound sense of safety. I buried my face in her hair, breathing in the scent of her, feeling the storm raging inside me subside momentarily. Then came the inevitable argument, born of my crippling fear and her frustration with my silence. She sensed the enormity of what I was hiding. The tension finally snapped during a rare outing at a cramped, noisy cafe. I was distant, flinching every time a flash of light seemed to hit us, terrified of being seen. She reached for my hand across the sticky wooden table, and I recoiled slightly, a reflex I instantly regretted. Her face fell, the light dimming in her eyes. It wasn't about the money, I realized. It was about trust. The fear that I valued the opinion of my world more than her, that I would abandon her to save my own skin. We left quickly, the air thick with unresolved anguish. Back at her studio, the unspoken conflict exploded. I retreated, putting up walls I hadn't realized I possessed, while she radiated a quiet hurt that was devastating. The gap between us, born of my lie and my fear, felt vast and insurmountable. I leaned against a cold wall, watching her turn away. Her shoulders slumped, and the potential loss felt more tangible, more real, than the billions I was expected to inherit. The silence between us was deafening, a vacuum that sucked all the air and light from her studio. We existed in the same small space, yet felt worlds apart. I knew the moment of truth was here. I couldn't keep living this double life, constantly flinching, constantly calculating the cost. The thought of my life returning to the cold formality of my mansion, without the warmth of Maya's presence, felt like a slow, deliberate death. I walked over to where she sat on the edge of her bed, her back still stiff with pain. I knelt before her, placing my hands gently on her knees. Her eyes, when she finally looked at me, were glistening with unshed tears, and my heart shattered. I confessed everything. The corporate pressure, the ultimatum, the choice between the multi-generational fortune and the uncertain path with her. I let the fear, the grief, and the agonizing guilt pour out. I told her about the shame of being controlled, the sudden realization that all my wealth had never bought me a single shred of true self-worth until I met her. I told her that my life, the gilded cage, was a prison, and she was the only key. My voice broke on the final, raw admission that the thought of losing her was worse than being poor. She didn't speak. She just reached out, her hands framing my face, her callous thumbs gently wiping away the tears that were now streaming down my cheeks. She pulled me up onto the bed, holding me tight, a deep, full-body embrace that felt like an anchor dropped in a raging sea. I buried my head in her neck, inhaling her familiar, comforting scent, and allowed myself to have the breakdown I'd been holding back for weeks. I wept for the life I had to leave, the expectations I was shattering, and the fear of the unknown road ahead. As the tears subsided, we lay back, our bodies spooned together, the storm passing into a profound calm. She ran her hand, slow and steady, along the curve of my hip. I felt her presence, strong and unwavering. She leaned down, kissing me not with passion, but with a deep, consuming tenderness, a promise of protection and solidarity. When her touch went lower, a slow, gentle caress that sought to comfort more than excite, I surrendered fully. Our sync bodies found a rhythm that was less about frantic release and more about shared peak, a physical affirmation of our internal connection. She unraveled my walls, and I felt the release of weeks of emotional constriction, a profound, queer-positive joy washing over me. In the afterglow, entwined limbs and synchronized hearts, I whispered the only thing that mattered. It feels safe. I knew my decision had been made in that moment of absolute vulnerability and release. My choice was her. If it kept you hooked, subscribe now to Sapphic Tales so you never miss the next. I reached out, taking her hand, a simple act that felt momentous. I turned her palm over and kissed the center of it, a silent bow of devotion. I knew what I had to do next. I had to walk away from the fortune for good. The final confrontation with my family had to happen now. Quick reminder, if you're enjoying this story, hit subscribe to Sapphic Tales so you don't miss the next one. The next morning, the air between us was clear, the heavy storm having passed. There was a quiet strength in Maya's gaze, a non-judgmental acceptance that gave me the courage I needed. I left her studio, not in my usual designer clothes, but in a simple shirt and trousers she had lent me, a physical symbol of the transition I was embracing. I drove my luxury car back to the estate one final time. The confrontation was brief, cold, and utterly final. I walked into the study, looked my family in the eye, and told them I chose my life, my love, over their money and their control. The shock on their faces was quickly replaced by an infuriated resignation. The words of disinheritance were spoken, sharp and devoid of emotion, yet they held no power over me anymore. I felt lighter than I had in years. The crushing weight of expectation finally lifted. I simply handed over the keys and my corporate access card. I walked out of that mansion, the magnificent gates closing behind me, and never looked back. I was an heiress without an inheritance, a woman without a fortune, but I was also, for the first time, free. My new life was an exhilarating chaos. I moved into Maya's tiny apartment, trading acres of manicured gardens for a view of fire escapes and the smell of city grit. I learned to navigate grocery shopping on a budget, the struggle of paying rent, and the liberating simplicity of having nothing to lose. I found a small job working for a nonprofit arts organization, using the business skills I had acquired, but for a cause that resonated with my soul. It was a life of effort, uncertainty, and constant, surprising joy. We had to save every penny, and the small victories, Maya selling a new piece or me getting a small raise, felt more significant than any multi-million-dollar deal I had ever closed. The romance deepened in the face of shared hardship. We cooked together in her cramped kitchen, our bodies bumping affectionately. We spent evenings walking through the city, hand in hand under the stars, talking about her next artistic vision or my next fundraising project. We learned each other's financial anxieties, our professional disappointments, and our deepest, silliest hopes. We were a team, a genuine partnership built on shared dreams and unconditional love, not on a foundation of money or obligation. I rested my head on her shoulder on the subway, and the intimacy of that public, simple gesture felt like the greatest luxury of all. Our kisses now held the deep, comforting flavor of permanence, of a struggle shared and a love hard won. I often think about the two paths I faced, the smooth, predictable road of luxury and the winding, uncertain path of artistic passion. I remember the cold fear, but mostly I remember the warmth of her hand in mine, guiding me across the threshold. I may have given up the fortune, but I gained an entire universe. I learned that true wealth is not measured in balance sheets or square footage, but in the depth of connection and the absolute, beautiful freedom to be exactly who you are, with the person who loves every genuine, messy part of you. My life with Maya is a vibrant, unfinished canvas, and I wouldn't trade its uncertainty for all the predictable gold in the world. If it kept you hooked, subscribe now to Sapphic Tales so you never miss the next.